Yeah, I heard that there is a strategy you can use with Kickstarter where you make a bunch of money selling your books. So I think I'm just going to do that. Is that for real? We're going to find out today. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm MK Williams. I'm an author and independent publisher. I love sharing my insights about all things self-publishing with you. Before I get into the details of today's video, don't forget to hit subscribe. That way you can be here every week as I release new videos on self-publishing, making a career out of being an author, and now being a mompreneur. And in today's video, it's a follow-on from our last video that we did with Rob, who is the author of the children's book, M is for Money. So we talked last time about how he found the illustrator and working with the illustrator. Today, we're going to talk about launching a Kickstarter campaign and all of the work that went into the Kickstarter campaign before it launched. So yes, there's a lot that goes into it. So we're going to go over the strategy, how he planned for it, what the planning elements were, what he had to kind of work with the illustrator on. There was a lot of moving pieces to getting this book live. So without any further delay, we're going to hop right into the interview with Rob to talk about the Kickstarter. Hey guys, so before we actually jump into the interview here, and if you're watching this whole series, you may even get sick of hearing me give this little disclaimer to you, but I have a link down below in the description to get a checklist from me. It's going to go over all the details we're covering in the videos in this entire series, from figuring out the illustrator and who you're going to work with, vetting them, interviewing them, determining if you want to do a Kickstarter campaign, all the details that go into it. So I really suggest, if this is something that you're considering, that you click the link below and claim this checklist. I leave space where you can take notes for things, and just a lot of things that Rob and I learned along the way are in here. Now, obviously, your campaign is going to be unique and special to you, so take additional notes elsewhere, but this should really help you get started with planning, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how you guys use this. So definitely make sure to claim this checklist below before you even watch the video, so you can take notes along with, but definitely by the end of watching all these videos, if you are deciding, hey, I really want to do a Kickstarter, this is the checklist that's going to help you. Okay. All right. Talk to you guys soon. Bye. All right, let's kickstart this video. It's all about the Kickstarter campaign around your children's book, M is for Money. So Rob, welcome back. Thank you for coming again. We're going to be talking today about M is for Money, your latest book, which is an ABC's book about money for kids. And so the great thing, I think one of the biggest successes to date of this book at the time of this recording was the Kickstarter. So let's kind of dive in and talk about, why did you even want to do the Kickstarter? What did you know about it before you decided to do the children's book? Kind of walk me through some of that decision process of like, am I really going to do the Kickstarter? And we'll go from there.
So I guess I'm going to throw a question back at you first. Approximately how much should an author expect for a book to cost them to bring an idea to life? So like, do you have a rough idea of the numbers? I know I just totally threw you under the bus with that one.
It totally depends. It totally depends on the book and the author. So it depends on the extent of what the author is willing to do themselves. It depends on the genre. So I would say for a children's book like this, a 32-page children's book, where the author has done the writing, but the author cannot do the illustrations. If they feel like, I don't have the skills, even if I try to learn it, it's not going to look good, I'm going to hire an illustrator. I would expect them to pay at least $1,000 for the illustrations, potentially going up to $2,000, depending on the detail, depending on any extras, depending on the length of the book. And then okay, well, then it has to go to production. Now, the nice thing is, as self-published authors, we can do print on demand, which means, yes, there is a physical cost to each book that is purchased and sent out, but that doesn't hit your bank account. All that hits your bank account is the royalty that's left over. So that is a nice benefit. And obviously, you have your ISBNs, a couple $100 there. That's the smallest portion, but the illustrations are definitely going to be into 3 figures if you want it done right, if you want it to look good. There obviously are some people who charge less as they're starting out, but then you're potentially working with someone who also doesn't know what to do. And I think us going with somebody who said that they knew how to format it for KDP, for Amazon KDP, and for Ingram Spark was huge. So it was kind of worth that. So that was my initial spiel. Yep.
And like, you guys, if you haven't seen it already, go back to our last video where we talked about the whole process of finding the illustrator, because there are some out there, you'll be like, oh, this is like such a steal. Like, this is a great deal for an illustrator. And what I'm hearing in these groups is that there are illustrators out there who are either plagiarizing other people's content, they're using clip art, and they're just basically giving you crap. that is not sellable, because as soon as you try and sell it, you will realize, oh, this is plagiarized content. I can't actually sell it, and you can't go back and get your money back either. So watch that last video for just how we vetted illustrators, so you can kind of get an idea of like what the process looked like. But yeah, expect to pay for this. You're paying for someone's time and skill, and particularly like the more complex your illustrations are, the more time they're gonna have to spend on those. And you imagine like if you were charging per hour, what your rate might actually come out to be like. So it's not cheap for sure. And that all comes back to your question about why Kickstarter. Well, I didn't have the money. And I also do a lot of work with young entrepreneurs. So I have a business of my own called The Simple Startup, where I help coach 10 to 18-year-olds through starting their own businesses. If anyone's interested, go check out thesimplestartup.com. But one thing I wanted to do was demonstrate to my students, like, hey, I talk to you all the time about how you can start a business for free. One of the ways to do that is to pre-sell your value. So that's where you tell people, look, this is what the business is about. This is what I'm going to do, or the product I'm going to make. And can I get your money up front? And then I'll use that money, bring the business or product or service to life, and I don't incur any costs myself. I get to use your money to fund the business. And Kickstarter is one of these platforms out there that allows you to kind of to do that. Basically, Indiegogo is another one, by the way. And I was trying to decide between the two of them. I picked up a book called Kickstarter Launch Formula, and that's by Salvador Brigman. And that was a recommendation from another children's book author, Tiffany Liche, who had wonderful advice for how to get started. And I was like, she said, this is the number one. Pick up this book if you're going to do a Kickstarter. It's like full of spelling errors. It's got bad formatting in it. So like, it's not like the most polished book in the world, which was a little bit of an off-putting thing at first, but the content in it is great. And it did help me very quickly to figure out like, hey, how do I need to set up this Kickstarter campaign? Like my book is full of notes and underlines and highlights. Like it's got tons of stuff in it. So Kickstarter, how it works, you figure out what you want your funding goal to be. So that's why I kind of asked you about the expected cost. I set a funding goal of $6,000, and that was based on doing an offset run of 500 copies of my book, shipping each of those books out. So you have to try and kind of think about, okay, well, how much is shipping going to be? Are there any additional materials that are going to be in there? So for me, I had bookmarks, stickers, magnets, and I feel like I'm missing something. Oh, I had a card itself. So a printed card that went in there. And then you also had to think about the illustrator cost. Were there any other costs? So I hired yourself, MK Williams, as an amazing author coach. I also hired a second author coach for marketing purposes, just to try it out, to see like, could I learn more about how to reach out to a wider audience? Didn't work out as well, but it's certainly something that I built into my cost. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make sure I get it back on the other end through Kickstarter. So that was one of the ways that I was kind of figuring out my number. And then I, like a wise business owner does, I assumed that my costs were going to be higher than I actually projected for. So I added an extra 10% in to my cost. And that's where I came out with $6,000. So I knew if I could at least sell $6,000 worth of books or pledges, that I would be able to cover all my costs and fulfill those rewards. And then I would still have some books left over that I could use for free marketing, or I could try and sell them on the side, whatever it was. So that was the numbers part of Kickstarter, which I think is it's a hard part for a lot of people who are thinking about it. Second thing, why Kickstarter? It was idea validation. So if you do a Kickstarter, you put up your information about what your product is going to be. So some people do it for games, some people do it for movies that they want to shoot, some do it for books. You just tell people what your idea is, and then you give them the chance to put their money down and say, yes, I want to see this idea come to life. So I knew that if I couldn't achieve $6,000, that nobody was going to be charged. So no one's credit cards get charged. There's no partial funding stuff. It's an all or nothing deal. And if it was nothing, that means that everyone gets to walk away from the table without, really incurring any cost. Now, I would have incurred costs because I'd already done the illustrator agreement. But in my head, I was like, okay, I'm willing to sink this money in to try and make this come to life. I was pretty confident that the idea was going to be good, but at least I knew that I wouldn't go further and print the books if I couldn't get them to sell on Kickstarter.
And one of the things we knew too, because we had estimated like a 500 book shipment, was that if the Kickstarter did really well and you needed to order more books, that the price per book got better. So I know that was part of our
yes,
estimation calculus there. So that was we're crossing our fingers for that.
And it did work out that way. So spoiler alert, Kickstarter did actually get funded, and it did very well. It actually was more than 200% funded. So we ended up with 1,300, or $13,749. So it was a very successful Kickstarter campaign, which was great and allowed us to order 1,000 books instead of 500. And we had over 300 books donated as part of the Kickstarter campaign. And we can go into what the Kickstarter campaign looked like itself. Either this video or the next one, but
yeah.
We'll break it down.
Yeah. So, and one thing I'll mention too. So for authors watching this who think, okay, so I watched the last video. So Rob wrote the book. He had to do all this detailed back and forth with the illustrators. When did he have time to plan the Kickstarter? And so that was kind of a twofold discussion. So I know when we started working together, we said, let's finalize the book content. Let's get the illustrator lined up. And then we're going to focus on Kickstarter because it was a lot going on. I think one benefit too is that you're a school teacher and there's this thing that happens every year called summer. And so that I think was a great time for the Kickstarter to have launched because you weren't juggling school as well as Kickstarter. I mean, you had like family vacation and stuff. But also that gave us some runway to get creative with some of the rewards. So that was fun to do. So with the multiple levels and tiers in Kickstarter, so that had to be mapped out before it launched, obviously. So how did you decide on these? Like, did you pull inspiration from other successful Kickstarters? Like, how did you come up with the different reward tiers and kind of what were some of the most unique ones that were on there?
So just like I did with the book illustrations in the last video, so where I kind of was creating a Pinterest board of things I liked, it was the same thing with Kickstarter. I went into other Kickstarters. I tried to find the elements that I really liked, like what drew me into them, what made me want to back them. The Kickstarter pitch video is one of the most important parts of it. So I was looking at, well, what aspects of the video do I like? The book Kickstarter launch formula that I was dealing with that had like, here are the things you really need to include in your Kickstarter homepage. And then, it was a lot of just like, what are elements of other people's Kickstarters that I really liked? So at its core with Kickstarter, you have a pitch video and you don't have to do one. You can just do a still image, but statistically, Kickstarters with a video are way more likely to get funded than ones without it. Are there exceptions to the rule? Yes, but they are the exception to the rule rather than a general thing. So you're going to have to do a video of some sort, most likely if you want your Kickstarter to be successful. Then you've got your background story. So like, what's the book about? Why did you write it? So you're trying to give your potential backers a reason to back the book. So if it's just another book, they're probably not going to do it. They're gonna be like, I'll just find another book that kind of meets this need, or I'll find it on Amazon. You have to, like a business owner, tell people what the problem is and then why this book is going to solve that problem for them. And if it doesn't do that, I think it's a harder sell. So I feel like nonfiction has a lot of room to run in this area. Fiction might be a little bit of a harder sell sometimes, unless you're saying like it's really meeting a need in a world or a space that is not being met yet, or if people want more of this space, but they can't find it elsewhere, then they can do that. So just, thinking about how are you going to solve a problem for your fans or your customers or whoever it is.
And then, I'll have a link in the description below to Rob's Kickstarter page. So even though the campaign has ended, spoiler alert, it ended, it was successful. You can still go back and see all the detail. And I would encourage anybody who's thinking about it to go through and actually read through the level of detail. I mean, it is almost another book in itself, the level of detail that's in there. And so obviously you had to rate that as well.
Yeah.
This project just keeps getting busier for you.
But you can reuse some of that in your like Amazon descriptions later. So you've done a lot of this kind of stuff, marketing material that's useful in social media posts and your Amazon descriptions. So like it's reusable later. So don't feel like you're going to waste all this time once the Kickstarter's over.
Yes. But it's a very good example of the level of detail you need to put up. It isn't just throw something up there. And I would definitely commend you on how much work you did ahead of time on this. Okay. So as people are looking through this very long and detailed description on the page, they're going to notice on the right rail, all these different tiers. So how did you come up with the different tiers? And can you give us some examples of what was a successful tier? What tiers did people just weren't interested in? Like, let's talk a bit about that.
Okay. So when people come in to back your project, what you want to give them is options. So you want to give them a menu of options, and each one should be a different price. You don't want to give people a bunch of options at the same price. You want to do a tier of options. So the lowest price tier is the same for everyone. And that is just back without a reward. So people do have the option of just throwing cash at you and saying, I don't want anything in return. I just want to see this project come to life. So sometimes like that's where like your mom or your dad might come in and be like, yeah, I don't really want your kid's book. My kids are all grown up, but I'll I'll help your dream come to life kind of thing. And you can also have people internationally do that too, if they're super excited about your project, but you don't have the ability yet to send books internationally. So I had that issue. Like I couldn't have anyone outside of the US and Canada back the project. So I had a couple of people from the UK just be like, yeah, I'll take the ebook, or I'll back it with no reward. Then you want to think about your most basic reward. So in my case, that was the ebook. So that was the cheapest thing that I could produce and send out. So it's a digital resource. So there's no shipping costs involved. Once the book is created, like it's there. There's not much else to it. So that was my lowest priced item. And then from there, I started doing things like one hardcover copy, one signed hardcover copy, two signed hardcover copies that come with some of these extras. And that's when you start adding in some extra rewards like stickers or posters or coloring book pages. And I would advise people that the more physical stuff you add in as bonuses, the higher your shipping costs are going to be. So where possible, stick to digital rewards that people are actually going to be interested in having. So like I had a place for parents that they could record their kids' thoughts about how they would answer my Stash the Squirrel question. So Stash is my central squirrel character. He comes in and asks a question of the kids on every page. I wanted something where parents could record those answers and maybe like do it every couple of years to see like how their kids' answers changed. Digital reward, printable, super easy. Digital coloring book pages, super easy. We talked about in the last video, those came from the Illustrator, and I was just sending them out the PDF file that they could print out, and then boom, they've got coloring book pages. I don't have to supply anything. And so I was looking for digital rewards wherever possible. And then I also had smaller physical rewards that would fit inside of an envelope and wouldn't require a large package to send. And we'll get into shipping and fulfillment later, I'm sure, but just something to think about ahead of time, that you'll keep your shipping costs lower if you can keep the items smaller, fewer, and ideally digital. And then what you really want to do that a lot of people don't do is you want to offer some higher priced tiers. So you want to space your tiers out, and you kind of want to almost encourage the person to go up a tier, because they'll get everything in the previous tier plus that little bit more for a little bit extra. And you're always trying to tease them up to that next level. So I had, the basic book, 2 books, and then I went up to give 5. So the person was actually buying 6 books. They would receive 3 and they would give another 3. So the idea was that they would keep 1 for themselves. They would give 2 of their own, and then I would donate 3 on their behalf. And that's now a $100 or $120 tier. So that was like that was my best selling tier, I think. So $120, even though like the book was going for 20 at one of the lowest tiers, the $120 tier was my highest. And that of course moves the needle a lot faster than single books. I had donate 10 books. So they really got 11, 1 to keep, 10 to give away. And then it went up to a class set. So we had 30 books being donated to a school. So the person got 1, I would donate 30 to a Title I school. I was also trying to donate books to public libraries too. So Title I schools and public libraries were my like side goal for this. I wanted at least 300 books donated to schools and libraries. And by people buying these higher tiers, they were also donating books. And I think that was valuable because not a lot of people want to buy 10 books to themselves and then figure out distributing them. They just kind of like, oh, you're gonna give them away on my behalf. I'm happy to donate books. Absolutely. So offer these higher tiers. And I had bigger ones again, where I would do things like a virtual school visit. We talked about it in the last video that there was the option to have a character illustrated in the book in you or your child's likeness. So we could have an adult or a kid like forever imprinted in the book. No one took me up on that tier, but I think I was charging like $500 for that one. So it wasn't super surprising that no one took me up on it. But if you never asked, there was no chance someone was going to back it for 500. So at least I put that option out there, and I set a limit of 2. So the most that was ever going to have was 2 people backing. So it was going to have 2 illustrations max. And I think now you want to talk about the secret reward tier, right?
Yes. Let's talk about the secret reward tier. But I do want to just make a quick note here. So when you talked about donating to Title I schools and libraries, like Rob is a teacher. And so he knows the requirements that schools are going to ask for to say, hey, we need to vet this. Like we can't just take any book somebody just hands us. Like we have to make sure it meets our needs. It meets like other requirements. So Rob definitely understands that. So if you are looking to do a Kickstarter for your own book, but you have not talked with like some kind of a school administrator, some kind of librarian, and you think like, well, I want to have the donation part, have that conversation early beforehand so that you know that your donation will be accepted. Otherwise, you're going to be like, oh, these people expect me to donate this book for them and nobody will take it. So that's just a little asterisk. But yes, let's now talk about the secret reward tiers and how some of this influencer marketing worked with that, because that was all wrapped in together.
All right. So Kickstarter will have a hard start date, and you have 30 days or 60 days. You can choose your window. 30 is the recommended time to do it. 60 seems to stretch too long and people don't quite get the scarcity mindset you need for them to come in and back. 30 days seems to be the sweet spot. You can actually do less too, but again, 30 seems to be the recommended one. And so I started on July 1st, ended on July 30th or 31st, like it might stretch into the 31st a little bit. And so what happens is on July 1st, it opens up. You want to get as many people to come in and pledge as possible on those first couple of days, because that creates this momentum. We know that the consensus principle of purchasing, like human psychology, we love seeing what other people are doing and we love following that crowd. So if you can see a crowd starting to sponsor something, other people jump in, and it's also really good for the Kickstarter algorithm. It kind of pushes that up to the top of projects that other people may be interested in backing. So definitely you want to try and think about, how do I get as many people as possible to come in on that first day and throw money at this project? So the secret reward tier was my way of trying to secure pledges before the campaign even started. So what I was thinking of was, in video games, there's this idea of an Easter egg where there's something hidden by the game developer in the game that only like true fans of the game will ever usually find or recognize because they've spent so much time playing it, or it's like this really subtle thing in the background. And I wanted something similar. It wasn't quite as subtle in this book, but that kind of idea where I wanted to place some of my favorite personal finance brands or influencers. I want to give them an opportunity to place something from their brand in the book. It wasn't like a selling opportunity. Like I'm saying, like, here's a sales sticker. Like I don't want a promo code. I don't want anything like that. I just want like something that belongs in the picture, that has like a brand written on it. So there's a couple of examples in the book. I'm sure we can show you in a couple of seconds, but the approach to them was, I wanted to say like, hey, I really love what you're doing, and I'm coming out with this M's for Money book. Here's my description of what it is. Here's my rough draft of what the illustrations are going to look like. I had a really terrible rough draft of what it looked like, but at least it had placeholder images. It had the text in there, and it gave people an idea, like a visual of what the book was going to be about, versus like if you send the text of a children's book to someone, they have no clue what it's going to look like. The text alone is not enough. And what I was saying was, if the influencer backed the project at the 120 tier or higher, so that was the give 5 books or higher. So if they committed to saying, yes, I will back at that level, then I said, cool, I will insert something from your brand in the book as a big thank you for that. And 2 reasons for it: I got bigger pledges, which was great. Also, I got people coming on board who now felt like kind of part owners of the book. It's like, well, my book's in this book, so I'm kind of invested in the success of this book, because the more kids and parents that see it, the more people are going to see my stuff as well. And so it was a kind of a twofold win. That I don't even know where I heard about the idea of the secret reward tier before, but it was somewhere else out there that someone else had done this, and I kind of tied the idea with the Easter egg together. And I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. And that ended up being very successful. So I think I had 12 different influencers / brands come in and commit to doing this. And they all went in within the first 3 days and backed at least $120. Some did the next tier up to 10 books. And that really gave the Kickstarter this like giant kickstart, for lack of a better word, in the beginning. And so, immediately we're 30-40% funded in the first couple of days. And then the general public is seeing that and they're like, ooh, there's people coming in and backing this thing with some money, because you can also see which tiers have been backed and by how many backers. So like people are coming in, they're like, oh, people aren't buying the individual book. They're buying like the give 5 thing. That looks, maybe I should do that too. So I feel like a lot of people were coming in like, well, other people are doing this. They're donating books. This must be something that's worth doing. I'm going to do that too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'll say the marketing that you did was like everything that I tell authors that they should do. And I know that I should do, but like you actually went and did it. So I would say anybody who's watching this video, I'm going to have also a link to the M is for Money Instagram, because Rob just crushed it on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And he was on every channel where people are, but he did a really great job. Like you can go back through and you can tell Kickstarter's coming, Kickstarter's coming, Kickstarter's coming. It's the like day of, and like every day there are multiple posts, and even to this day there are still multiple posts. So I will say, Rob, you crushed it on the marketing. You had those influencers acting on your behalf and saying like, hey, this is part of it. But you also were consistently out there, and I think that was so crucial. So in our next video, we're going to talk about what happens after a successful campaign, which is fulfillment. But let's talk about, just to finish off, what was the final amount for the campaign? Like, how did it end? What was the final it worked, right?
Yes. So funding goal originally was $6,000. We hit that on day, I think 9.
Okay.
So just over a week in, we hit that funding goal. I was actually on vacation at the time, and I was still like frantically refreshing the Kickstarter page. Like, we're so close, we're so close. So yeah, if you run a Kickstarter, you will probably really struggle to not keep hitting refresh to see, like, have more pledges been coming in. But once I hit my Kickstarter goal, I felt like I was able to relax a little bit more. So once you hit the goal, everyone can see on the Kickstarter page, and you can look at the Kickstarter page as well. I think the link's below, and you'll be able to see, like, oh, this project was funded. And that is a big moment, because you have 2 things you can do at that point. You can step off the gas and be like, we did it, job done. Or you can try and keep that momentum going and try and get more pledges in. And that's a hard thing to do, because if you feel like you've built your entire campaign around this one idea of hitting the funding goal, it's hard to be like, we did it, now for the next goal. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Because people are like, we just did it. We just met the goal. Why are we doing another one? So what's important to do beforehand is to plan for these things called stretch goals. And it's not something that like Kickstarter officially like says you need to do. It's something that if you look through other Kickstarters, you will see, and especially if you look through mine, you will see. These are additional reward tiers, additional things that your backers can unlock through backing the project. So they're usually additional perks that you want your people to actually want. So I think my first one was a bookmark. Like, I'm not sure that many people want a bookmark, but at least like it was something that I could tangibly give to them. Like, you earned this bookmark if we go $1,000 over our pledge amount. And we were going to hit that very quickly. So I wanted a quick goal, a stretch goal that we were going to hit, so that people would get that success. Like, we've all heard of the debt snowball, I hope. Same kind of idea, that sort of psychology coming in, where you want a quick win and then you want to space the next one out a little bit further and a little bit further again. So quick win, we got a bookmark. Then the next one was a fridge magnet. And then there was a talk with me. So like, I'm putting on a how to raise a financially responsible child talk on November 13th. So all my Kickstarter backers are invited to that. And so this is just, I'm going to have a guest speaker come in, and we're going to talk about money and how to raise kids. And that was just, again, a free thing I could do. It just cost me my time. And then the final one was the audiobook, which that you'll find other videos about the audiobook and that whole process on the amazing MK Williams page. But that was the final reward tier for my backers. If we could get to, I think it was 15,000 was what I was trying to hit to get the audiobook unlocked. In the background secret, we had already been making it on the side, so it was already going to exist. But I was like, hey, you know what, backers, if we can hit this, I will give you all a copy of the audiobook for free. And we got super close. We got to 13,749. And I was like, you know what, guys, you are awesome. I'm going to give you the audiobook anyway. So it was that nice feel good factor afterwards, again, that you can kind of say like, hey, everyone, here's a gift for being such an amazing backer. And the stretch goals are there to get people to increase their own pledges. So sometimes they will change their pledge to a higher amount to hit a goal. And they'll also encourage friends to come back and pledge as well. So you want people going and sharing the campaign as much as possible with other people to try and get it funded first off, and then also meet stretch goals.
There you go. All right. Well, over 13,000, man, that's a great payday. Well, let's talk about in the next video, how you just spent all that money on Mai Tais on the beach and all this great stuff. Cause you had a huge payday, right?
Rolling it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, yeah. Stay tuned for the next video where you find out how all that money got spent to be able to fulfill everything. All right, guys. So there's some big juicy details there. I know you want to know, oh, like that was super successful. He just has all this money. So in our next video, we're actually going to talk about the costs and where all this money went, because surprise, surprise, it all got spent. That's right. The Kickstarter campaign exists to fund itself. It's really for marketing. It's not necessarily for this big payday for you as the author. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next video. If you found this information helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to hit subscribe. That lets YouTube know that you get value from this information and can get it in front of other authors like us. Now you can get back to writing your book. Hey, if you want to continue to support this channel and my other creative work, please head over to buymeacoffee.com and support my channel. You can buy me 1 coffee, 3, 5, 10, or you can even get a membership. Those who are in the membership are actually going to be included in the acknowledgements pages of all of my published books moving forward as a big thank you. And you can even get some additional options to get an Instagram thank you post shout out or a shout out in an upcoming video. Thank you so much for supporting this channel.